Hello, everybody. You've tuned into the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance, Cops for Kids, subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. I want to thank Tom Trial for putting us on the ISPU Roadshow each and every week and having us with his expertise as he puts old stuff, new stuff, all kinds of film on the ISP YouTube site. Make sure you go there and look at what Tom's put on there for us. And I want to thank the State Police Alliance and their subsidiary for sponsoring us each and every week. And I want to thank Tim HORTY for coming in today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you for being here, Tim. Tim is the law enforcement coordinator for U.S. Attorney's Office, but long before that, we kind of knew each other.
We did.
So tell us about your career, Tim, how you got up to where you're at now.
Well, I started my law enforcement career in the mid-'70s. So I was an IU police officer in Bloomington. Okay. I knew since 5th grade that I wanted to be a police officer, and I tried to, stay on the straight and narrow. And I went to college at Indiana University studying, it was called forensic studies at the time. I think it's more police administration now. And I saw an advertisement for a law enforcement position as they called them cadet officers in Bloomington. So I joined and was accepted, and that's where I started my career. I stayed at Indiana University and got a degree in master's degree in education. I left there, went back to Evansville where I grew up and worked on the Ohio River for several months until January of 1981. I got accepted with the Indianapolis Police Department and came up here and have been in Indianapolis ever since.
And at that time, it was Indianapolis Police Department.
It was long before the Indianapolis Metro Police Department.
So what was your career track there? Did you stay as a patrol officer, or how'd that work out?
Well, I did, like all of us. We start out as a patrol officer, and that's sort of why we become police officers in the first place, to wear the blue or the green or the brown suit and go out there and make a difference in the world. But I worked on the east side in uniform. I was lucky enough to be given the chance to work in the vice branch in on the all different sides of town. That was great fun. I got promoted and went into the training academy, got promoted again, and was the public affairs officer for a while. And probably the most fun job I ever had on the police department was being in charge of the mounted patrol.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know anything about being a police officer on a mounted patrol. I knew a little bit about horses from Boy Scout camp, but they taught me what I needed to know and rode most days. That was great fun. And then I was lucky enough to be promoted. I became a deputy chief on the east side of Indianapolis for a while, and I finished my career as the deputy chief of the West District at IPD. It was IMPD just before I left, and worked in Hallville and got to know those great people out there for almost 7 years. And it was a great opportunity, and there aren't two things I think I would have changed about my career with the police department.
Now, how many years was that total with IMPD?
26 years.
26
years with the police department. I left in January of 2000, or I'm sorry, forgive me, March of 2007. The January is when the merger happened. And so at that point, I got the opportunity to work at the U.S. Attorney's Office for Susan Brooks at the time. And I've been there for nearly 12 years working for Josh Minkler, our U.S. Attorney now. And it's been a great second career. Again, wouldn't change hardly anything from what I've done.
12 years. I didn't know you'd been there that long.
I know. Time flies.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. Well, I know we worked together in the place of when you were in public information there at IMPD and moved on. So I didn't know that about the horse patrol. So you actually rode on the horse patrol.
I did. Sam was my horse for a long time, and I remember coming home with sores in all kinds of places, particularly on the insides of my knees where you would crimp down on that horse. But Sam was a good friend, and he knew a lot more about the horse patrol than I did at the time.
So was that out of the fairgrounds?
Yes.
Okay, at that time?
Yes.
And are they still there?
No, I believe they're out at the old they're out on West Washington Street
at the hospital,
State Hospital.
Right. Yes.
Central State.
Yep.
What used to be Central State.
Yeah. I think you're right out there now. I've seen him out there. Well, good deal. That's a long and great. And this is just for personal. Why IU instead of Vincennes University? You were down there in Evansville. Yeah.
At the time, Vincennes was just a junior college.
Okay.
And so a 2-year degree wasn't what I was looking for. And Evansville wasn't that far from where I grew up from Bloomington. And they had a great career in our academic program in, like I said, it was called Forensic Studies at the time. I knew I wanted to go there. I had grades just barely good enough to get in, and that's where I ended up.
And they do have a great police department, great police program down there.
They do.
That's neat. So the attorney's office. So what exactly do you do with the U.S. Attorney's Office now?
Well, my position is called a law enforcement coordinator there, and primarily it's maintaining relationships with state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies. We do a lot of training. I know we just had a law enforcement conference last week, and, you were there. I hope that you found it worth your while.
Excellent training. Excellent training.
But I mean, we feel like keeping police officers as professionally trained and honed as possible makes them more professional, makes them smarter, and makes their job a little easier, and frankly makes our communities safer. So keeping those relationships, doing the training. I also do the public affairs work there at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So writing press releases, getting press conferences organized, writing a media policy, and so forth, and just trying to get the proper messaging out from the U.S. Attorney's Office, both to the community and to our friends in the media.
Now, what's your area of coverage that you take care of?
That's a very good question, Rich. The Indiana is divided into two districts. There's a northern district and a southern district. The southern district is the southern 60 most counties. Okay. So if you drew a line from just south of Lafayette over to Kokomo and then to just north of Muncie, that is where the southern district lies. There's about 4 million people in it, so it's everywhere south of there all the way to the Ohio River, and then obviously everything north of that is considered the northern district of Indiana's U.S. Attorney Office.
Does someone else take care of that area then?
They do. A fellow named Tom Kirsch is the U.S. Attorney in the northern district, and that is his responsibility to prosecute all federal crimes and then defend the United States in civil actions. So if the Bureau of Prisons is sued, if a postal inspector is sued, or another federal law enforcement officer, the U.S. Attorney's Office is sort of their legal branch, their defender when it gets time to take something to court.
Well, again, you're listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance, Cops for Kids. I have Tim HORTY, who's the law enforcement coordinator for the U.S. Attorney's Office, with us today, and had a long career with law enforcement and been with the U.S. Attorney's Office for 12 years. So the job that you have, do you work with a lot of different agencies, state, federal, local, the whole time, or do you mostly work with the federal side of the...
No, that's the beauty of the job as law enforcement coordinator. I work with county deputies, with state troopers, with city officers, with town marshals, as well as our friends from the FBI, Drug Enforcement Administration, ATF, IRS, and those are all agencies that, bring cases to the United States Attorney's Office for federal prosecution. So it's a great opportunity to get to know all of our friends and colleagues in all levels and grades of law enforcement.
Do you have to travel much with this job?
I don't have to travel a lot, but we have a manned office down in Evansville.
Okay.
And so we go down there, I don't know, maybe every 6 weeks or so. We have another unmanned office in Terre Haute and New Albany. So there are oftentimes cases that the media might be interested in that we would go down there for, but not a lot of training, a lot of travel. But it's fun to see different sides of the state and travel just enough to get a good taste of and satisfy your wanderlust, and as well as get the job done, but not a lot, and not so where it's cumbersome where you're away from home, more than 2 or 3 nights a month.
Now, do you have to work with the federal courthouses throughout Indiana also?
Yes. In fact, they're sort of our governing body. When the court is open, the U.S. Attorney's Office has to be open, because if there are cases that are brought, a prosecutor has to be there to bring the case, to bring motions, to speak with the judge, and so forth. So they are sort of our our mothership of sorts, because we sort of serve their needs, as does the public defender.
Right. So on a big case, the Jared case, take for example, or something like that, what's your roles and responsibilities as far as something like that when it comes to Indiana? Do you have to coordinate the media side of it, or do you bring the law enforcement side in, or do you have to do both?
I do. It's a little of both. The law enforcement side sort of takes care of itself, but the media is always a challenge, and there's always a balance between the public's right to know, the office's obligation to keep a case not so much under seal, but under wraps until it's time to present it. And so, large cases like the Tim Durham case that has national coverage when Jared Fogle was prosecuted, that was a big undertaking with the federal media. Or the national media, but again, it's a fun challenge, and it's an opportunity to meet with those folks, and you'd be surprised people that will call you and they're your new best friend, just off the record. I know, just on background, tell me a little something. Well, I can't really do that. No, really, you can tell me, and so I mean, I got to be friends with these people over the phone, but I find that they're people just like all of us, and they've got a job to do, and it's their job to get information out, and it's our job to get information out in good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, one of the things we've kind of looked at here in Indianapolis and other places is maybe the number of homicides and shootings that we're having. What do you think we can do about that?
It's a big challenge, Rich, and Indianapolis has had about 19 homicides. And I'm convinced that it is all of our responsibility to do something about violent crime in general. It's not just law enforcement's job; it's everyone's responsibility. And as soon as the folks in Greenwood and Brownsburg and Carmel and Zionsville are as upset and disturbed about this violent crime as the folks that live in some of these more challenging areas, I don't think anything's going to change. But the U.S. Attorney's Office has what we call a Project Safe Neighborhood program, where we are prosecuting with great vigor those that are illegally carrying firearms.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter where you fall on the Second Amendment issue. I think we all understand that if you're a convicted felon, you have no right to carry a gun. Mm-hmm. And so we're working with all the IMPD district commanders, making sure that we together look at the cases that are best suited to prosecute, and those folks that are catching gun cases, and if they've got a prior felony, we're looking at felon in possession charges, and the federal prosecutor is going to hold you accountable, and you're going to end up in the Bureau of Prisons someplace.
And I think I've heard this, that ISP, our troops are working with some of the federal authorities on a Safe Streets project that's going on around Indianapolis.
Almost every federal law enforcement agency in Indianapolis here has a task force officer from the Indiana State Police. I know that ATF does, as well as DEA,
U.S. Marshals,
and the Marshals. And I think, again, that puts all of us a little closer together. It's great for information sharing, gives officers, troopers, deputies from agencies an opportunity to work with federal agencies, and like I said, just work smarter together.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the things that I get asked a lot of times is how do I get into the law enforcement profession, and is it still a good profession, and especially with the federal. What's a good way to get? I know you started out with IMPD and then went to the federal government. Is that a good way still?
I think that's the way a lot of young men and women find their way into federal law enforcement. They work 2 or 3, 5 years at the local law enforcement level. I know federal agencies are always looking for folks with computer skills, with language skills, with legal backgrounds and so forth. So I think, not unlike local law enforcement, federal law enforcement is looking for good quality, hardworking people that are smart, that are willing to work, that have a specialty, and are willing to give their all to make a difference. So you don't have to be any smarter than anybody else to be a federal agent. I think you just have to have a little more experience.
Right.
As you could expect, they have every right to do just that.
And that's what I tell people nowadays is to get that computer skill. That's the way the world's going now. And then that second language.
Yes.
I know that you guys use a lot in your jobs, and that and I'm sure that you use wherever you go within the federal government or even your local government to what it is. So contact that people can get a hold of you through PIO if they want to talk to you?
I would be tickled to talk with anybody that wanted to learn more about our job. My email address is tim.horty, HORTY, @usdoj.gov. My phone number is 317-229-2409.
Great. Well, we're down to our last 40 seconds, Tim. I appreciate you coming in here and talking with us today, and I appreciate your friendship, what we've been through, and I'm sure you're going to be a great what you're doing here, and I know you're looking another route too. So good luck with that.
Well,
and
thank you.
I hope everything comes together for you.
Well, I wish you well, and again, thanks for having me here, and it's a pleasure being with you and Tom for the morning.
Yeah, Tom's behind. He won't come out behind the camera there. He's a hider. Well, again, you've been listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance. Cops for Kids, subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. I want to thank Tim HORTY for coming in and talking with us today. We'll catch you next week on the Roadshow. Roadshow is out.